Good morning. I'd like to call this work session of the Southampton Town Board to order on this 19th day of November 2020. Please rise if you're able and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Our Deputy Town Clerk, Kim Otadi, is here. Kim, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Schneiderman.
Here.
Councilwoman Lofsted.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
And Councilman Scibone.
Here.
All right, everybody is here. All right, so we're going to start today with reviewing the draft agenda for our upcoming meeting to be held November 24th. It'll occur in the town board meeting room at 6 p.m. So it is an in-person meeting. We're going to limit attendance here, so try to make an appointment and reserve a seat if you plan on speaking. If not, we'll be able to provide a waiting area and let you know when it is time to be heard. All right, we're still managing the challenges of COVID-19, and we are seeing an uptick in cases, and we're taking a few extra measures to make sure everybody is safe. All right, so for this meeting, and there are a couple other resolutions that aren't in the principal packet, and we'll get to those toward the end. So we will have some public hearings. There are three. One is on the acquisition of lands of Devonshire Associates, estate of Florence S. Kinn and Far Pond Investments, LLC in Shinnecock Hills. The second is on the acquisition of lands of Riser Trust in Noyak. The third is on the 2021 fire protection contracts. And that's it for public hearings. Any questions on public hearings? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to resolutions. The first one, 35-161, authorizes the supervisor to sign a contract with WSP USA in connection with the groundwater monitoring and sampling services of the third-party consultant for the Shabanic Golf Course. And is that different than Marty Petrovich? Is that a different company? It says formerly Leggett, Bracers, and Graham. Okay, I guess we use a different company there. The next one is Rick.
Yeah, ID number 35206, authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Arias Design LAPC for an amended architectural, landscape, and engineering conceptual park design plan for Shinnecock Canal Maritime Park.
Oh, good. We're moving along there. All right, Tommy Joe.
Town Board Resolution 35201, authorize the supervisor to execute a 2021 renewal of ESRI Incorporated for software licenses utilized at the GIS division.
Town Board Resolution 35175, authorize the supervisor to execute a contract extension with Univar USA Incorporated for the supply of liquid caustic soda.
Town Board Resolution 35200, authorize the supervisor to sign a new 2021 contract for Pavement Services Incorporated for engineering services to be provided to the Highway Department.
Resolution ID 35199, authorize the supervisor to sign agreements for senior services programs.
Town Board Resolution 35205, authorize the supervisor to sign an extension with LK McLean Associates for PC for professional services to be provided for the Ludlam Avenue Park restroom renovation and foundation stabilization.
ID 35208, authorize the supervisor to sign any and all documents for submission of request for qualification package to Suffolk County for the adult daycare program.
Okay, 35210 authorizes the Southampton Volunteer Ambulance, Inc. to make internal transfers to their budget. 35209 authorizes West Hampton War Memorial Ambulance Association to make budgetary changes. 35212 awards and authorizes supervisor to sign contract with Hayduck Engineering to provide engineering report for sewage treatment plant within Hampton Bay's downtown overlay district.
Town Resolution 35198, recall and amend the Town Board Resolution 874, 2020 to authorize the supervisor to sign contract extensions for street sweeper parts and gutter brooms with Locale Equipment Incorporated, Malvisi Equipment Company Incorporated, Old Dominion Brush Company, Vaso Systems, and Northeast Sweepers and Rentals.
35207 recalls and amends Town Board Resolution 2019265 and 2020203 with Summit Security to change name to Universal Protection Service LLC, doing business as Allied Universal Security Services. Sorry.
Town Board Resolution 35178, 2020 notice to bidders for outboard motor.
Okay, 35187 amends 2020 budget for various departments. 35168 authorizes additional funds for David Arnston Esquire of the law offices of Thomas M. Voles, PLLC, for all matters involving sand land, Huntington Ready Mix, and/or Wayne-Scott Sand and Gravel. Can I just check, it says ready mixed, is that what it is? M-I-X-E-D, or is this ready mix, M-I-X?
Just mix.
I think it's ready mix.
I think it's just a mix.
Can we fix that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Title, okay, John?
Town Board Resolution ID 35162 to adopt records retention and disposition schedule for New York State Local Government Records LGS-1 in accordance with Article 57-A of the New York State Arts and Cultural Affairs Law and 8 CRR-NY Part 185 Records of Public Corporations.
35203 recalls and rescinds Town Board Resolution 522 of 2018. That's the resolution where we designated the property in Red Creek Park potentially for an aquatic center. So that will pave the way for the next resolution, 35204, resolution supporting Southampton Town Aquatic Recreation Center projects at parcels 900-158, 319.2, and 900-158, 320. The idea behind this resolution is sort of the same thing, is to hold for a period of time, like 3 years, the option for this group to, should we agree to build an aquatic center at that, McGee Street property? They're trying to line up the financial commitments, and if they need something to say to their potential donors that, yes, the town, is giving us a green light to build an aquatic center here. Similar like we did with Red Creek. So to say that we're not going to go to some other group and have another group do an aquatic center, YMCA or whatever it is, that will reserve that property, giving them 3 years to put together the commitments to make it a reality. We can obviously revisit it after 3 years if they're halfway there and we want to extend the time. We can say, okay, we'll give you a little bit more time, but we don't want to take it off the table indefinitely for other park type of uses. Maybe we'll do tennis courts there or something like that else, but
Is there a reason why we can't have both properties as options?
yeah, I have to remember what the reason is. It's confusing now. We'll have two properties locked up
Okay.
for 3 years. We can always bring that one back
Back if-
at a later date,
Okay.
but I'm also concerned that as we evaluate the Southampton Animal Shelter and our own needs at Jackson Avenue,
Right.
we're gonna have to calculate the fact that we have reserved all this Pine Barrens compatible growth area for potential use.
Understood.
And deduct that from that, and I think it's cleaner to remove it personally. But I know that a lot of people in Hampton Bays are really excited about it. I think the big thing with Hampton Bays, though, that is different is there is an amazing pool over, it's not that far, heading west at the eastern campus. It may be closed now because of COVID. I know
Yeah,
John was
it's been
using it.
closed for a while now.
But it's a great facility.
It's
and-
really missed.
And this McGee Street property from, Hampton Bays, Shinnecock Hills, it's really accessible. It's, maybe it's a little further than Red Creek, but it's for a lot of people, it's not that much further. It's maybe 10 minutes longer. So it's really not a bad site for Hampton Bays either, personally. And if in this location they're able to raise the $20 million faster, I mean, something has to be said for that. You know, it's unfortunate in a way that they were struggling with the other site to get the commitments, but, you know, it's an unfortunate economic reality. So I hate to disappoint people over there, because I know some people were super excited. I think we need to think about Red Creek Park and doing, I'd like to see something similar to SYS, you know, like an indoor athletic facility there, you know, maybe rock climbing walls, maybe an indoor track, you know, maybe, you know, basketball and things like that. I think it would be heavily utilized. So even if we don't get the swimming pool, I think we still need to think about future development at that site for, you know, for recreation. And maybe work with the community. But again, it's even SYS, that was outside groups raising the money, you know, significant amounts of money to make that happen. And, you know, we're gonna need a partner in whatever development happens there. All right, so.
Well, on your supporting resolution, I'd like to add myself as co-sponsor, and I think this shows strong support.
Okay. Kim, would you note John as a co-sponsor on 35204? Anyone else? I know Tom
And me as
John.
well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know that
Thank you, Kim.
very well. Okay, so I think we are up to 35183. That's you, John?
Town Board Resolution ID 35-183 to release a maintenance bond in connection with the site plan of Fairfield, Southampton, Tuckahoe.
34837, 2020 part-time salaries. 35167, accepts retirement of Irene Blydenberg, minibus driver in senior services. 34923, accepts retirement of police captain Lawrence Shirk Jr. from Southampton Town Police Department. Yeah, I wish him just the very best in his retirement.
I think we all do. Yeah.
You know, the system we have, the pension system, there's a requirement when you hit a particular age that you have to separate from service. I think Larry would just spend the rest of his life working in the police department. He loves it, and they love him, and it's you know, it's a big loss for us because of his skill set. But you know, I had the pleasure of going to, you guys, some of you went to his walkout. Is that
Yep.
something like that? And it was really moving. It just you know, the amount of respect that the department has for him is really is quite something. All right, 35188.
And neighboring departments too, I think it should be said.
Was that?
There were a lot of other neighboring departments that
Sure.
were there. And the sheriff had people there as well as the state police. And-
County, all the
Yeah.
villages,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be, you know, he's got big shoes to fill, but,
literally and figuratively, right?
yeah, I know, I said, most of us look up to Larry, you know. He's earned it, but also, by virtue of his height, too. All right, so 35188, promotes Detective Lieutenant James Kiernan to rank of captain in Southampton Town Police Department. So I'm talking about filling shoes. So
Yeah.
the next resolution, this is, you know, we haven't discussed this as a board. The police chief has recommended James Kiernan, who's currently Detective Lieutenant, to move up to the captain position. And James is Lieutenant Kieran has been with the department for a very long time, as you all know. He's the #1 on the captain's list. And, you know, he comes with a very strong recommendation from Chief Skrinicki. So I'm happy to discuss this either here or in executive session with the board, but I forwarded the resolution at the chief's request. 35193 promotes Sergeant Howard Kalb to the rank of lieutenant in Southampton Town Police Department. And, again, I'm happy to bring the chief in to answer any questions about any of these promotions. So this would be to fill the vacant lieutenant post that is created when Lieutenant Kiernan moves up to captain. This would put Howard Kalb, who's a sergeant, up to the rank of lieutenant. So that's a big promotion as well. And we have one more here. 35194 promotes police officer Sherikan Parker to rank of sergeant in Southampton Town Police Department. So as the sergeant moves up to lieutenant, creates a vacancy in the sergeant rank. And Sherikan Parker, again, is the police chief's recommendation for this position. Now, what's interesting about this is it is somewhat historic in that not only is Sherikan African-American, he's also Shinnecock. And it will be actually the first person of color in the administration in Southampton Town Police Department ever. We've had various people of color work in the department, but never in the administration of the department. So this is a big deal, and he has earned it. So again, I'm happy to have Chief Skrinicki explain to you guys why these choices are his recommendations, if you so desire. You can have it here, or you can have it privately with the chief. But nobody knows this department better or more closely than Chief Skrinicki. So, and I know, and I love the fact that everything he does is earned. It's all merit-based. There's no other factors than record, ability, integrity, character. This is all based on the individual, their record in the department, and really just no other factors, which is great. It's not about who you know or family or anything like that. It's all about the individual and their qualifications. Okay, 34911 authorizes the hiring of Shannon Merker as police officer. So we have a vacancy as a regular police officer. Again, so things are, we have a police officer leaving, Captain Schirik is leaving, a bunch of people moving up. It creates a vacancy as well as Sherikan moves up potentially to the rank of to sergeant. Then we're able to fill the empty police officer position, and that is Sharon Merker. I don't know much about her.
Sang the national anthem that was swearing in, so.
No, that was Katie White.
You're right.
I don't know Shannon, but she is, it's another woman in the department, which would be good, because it's been for years, a male-dominated department. So, we want to have the police department reflective of the community at large, both in terms of ethnicity and in terms of gender. So I think it's important. So again, that's the police chief's recommendation. And we'll move on to 35195, authorizes the hiring of Madeline Sanga. Am I saying that right? Because that sure sounds like
Got a G right up there. I don't know if the S is silent.
Madeline Sanga. Isn't she like the district attorney somewhere? Who am I thinking
Oh,
of?
yeah, it sounds right. The Nassau County PA is something similar to that, yeah.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong.
Yeah, let's say that.
Madeline Sange, maybe, police officer. So this is another hiring. We have an opening, and I think also Lieutenant Zaro is retiring too. So there's openings. All right, so that's a second female. So I guess there's two women officers that the chief is recommending. 35030, notice of public hearing to consider amending Town Code Chapter 325 to authorize the extension of conditional wetlands permit approvals and wetlands permits to waive any applicable extension fees. Oh, yeah, let me just explain what this is, too. So hopefully you guys recall what we did with building permits. There was a problem with building permits running out of time during the pause period. Many were issued during the pause period. Significant amount of that time, construction was not permitted, and not even landscaping was permitted. And, it came to my attention, as we extended those permits that were issued during or were active during that pause period, they didn't really have enough time to complete those jobs, so we automatically extended them, I think, for 6 months. This just parallels whatever we did with the building permits for these conservation board permits as well, so that it matches up. So anyone who got caught up in that pause period has a little bit of extra time, 6 months, to without having to pay for that additional time. All right? And this was recommended to me.
I think we're on page 32.
30, I think you're next, right?
Yeah. Town Board Resolution ID 35146. It's a notice of public hearing to accept a grant of conservation easement from Joseph Zachary Gaza for property to be maintained as open space located at West Hampton pursuant to Southampton Town Code, Chapter 244-4, obtaining of development rights certificate, and Chapter 247, General Municipal Law of the State of New York. Town Board Resolution ID 35149, accept a TDR grant of conservation easement from Blair K. Gaza for property to be maintained as open space located at West Hampton pursuant to Southampton Town Code 244-4, obtaining of development rights certificate, and Chapter 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
Yeah, go ahead, I have a question for Jim.
Town Board Resolution ID 35150, accept a deed of residual fee from Blair K. Gaza for property to be maintained as open space located at West Hampton pursuant to Suffolk County Tax Map, Chapter 244-4, obtaining a development rights certificate, and 247 General Municipal Law for the State of New York. And this goes on for some time. Town Board
Keep going.
I'm sorry?
Keep going.
Town Board Resolution ID 35153, accept a TDR deed of residual fee from Blair K. Gaza for property to be maintained as open space located at East Quogue pursuant to the Southampton Town Code 244-4, obtaining a development rights certificate, and Chapter 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York. Town Board Resolution 35152, accept a deed of residual fee from Joseph F. Gaza for property to be maintained as open space located at North Sea pursuant to Southampton Town Code 244-4, obtaining a development rights certificate, and Chapter 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York. Town Board Resolution ID 35154, accept a TDR deed of residual fee from Rosemary Grau et al. For property to be maintained as open space located at West Hampton, Suffolk County Tax Map, in the document, pursuant to Southampton Town Code, Chapter 244-4, obtaining a development rights certificate, and Chapter 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York. Town Board Resolution ID 35155, accept a quick claim deed from Rosemary Grau et al. For property to be maintained as open space located at West Hampton, Suffolk County Tax Map is in the document pursuant to Chapter 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York. And as you recall, these were a lot of public hearings that we opened and closed.
So, just in full disclosure, so the Grau family and the Gaza family are related through marriage. And that, Joe Gaza, Blair Gaza's daughter, they seem to, I really don't know of anybody else who's doing this, but they seem very active in terms of acquiring development rights and piecing them together. I've wondered why, when they have a choice to go Pine Barrens credits in some of these cases, or town development rights, they're opting for town development rights, but I think there may be issues with the ability to sell the Pine Barrens credits. There have been a couple auctions there, and I don't think the prices are as beneficial as the town, or that, I don't think they're as marketable, and I think that's why they're choosing this route. But,
We've had some inquiries recently. Actually had an inquiry whether the town has Pine Barrens credits. And,
we do.
We do.
We do have development rights in,
well, no, but even Pine Barrens, we have our own development.
So-
as well. We also,
And some, but
We
some
also have
have
some
been
actual
been
PDCs.
streeted. Yes, have been stripped.
purchases.
yeah, we have some in our own bank that we own,
Right, we have our own TDRs, and then, right, I think we also have
of Pine Barrens
Pine
credits
Barrens
as well.
credits to sell.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we did, but when I looked in, actually, the commission has a registry, and they show that we have 60, all in West Hampton. I think they're out of those, some of the big acquisitions we did in the core area, like WJF, if you remember. that,
Sure.
yeah. I think from there, because we've had some inquiries as whether, number one, do we own Pine Barrens credits, not our own TDR, and then whether we would
Sell them.
sell them.
So,
Yeah.
Are people looking for them?
Apparently, I've had one inquiry recently, so I was gonna follow up on that, but
No,
yeah, one is worth.
if we didn't have them, I was gonna see if I could steer them over to the TDR.
So I was
Now, would
just
that-
gonna say that.
Is that, will that money
tell you what.
then, that money may have to go back to CPF if CPF was used to buy the property, or if
Right.
it was a general open space bond, then maybe it could go to the general purposes.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. We have an
But we also have development rights
Sure.
in a couple different, we have in Southampton School District, but also if we resolve this issue with that property is it East Quogue? The one all the way down by the water, the house with the graffiti on it. I think that there is a development right attached there that we'll be able to strip off and potentially sell there too, unencumbered. So the land that we preserve with CPF, we do strip development rights, but they can only be used for affordable housing. These others are not restricted, so we can literally sell them and use the money to lower taxes or to, for other purposes. The ones off of Conklin came from the Community Housing Fund. So in that case, the money will go toward, Diana's department. It'd be earmarked only for that. The East Quogue one, I don't think that would be restricted. I think that the money could go to anything. We could decide to put it toward affordable housing, or we could use it for other purposes. All right. Continuing on, 34848, authorized acquisition of development rights of lands of Peconic Land Trust as contract vendee, Eastport, amends the CPF management and stewardship plan. That was that, oh, it's right there, it's still on the wall. That piece next to the farmland. It is farmland itself, and that's for access and just a regular development right purchase. John, you're next.
Town Board Resolution ID 35171, recall and amend Resolution 219-982, road review application for Vincenzo and Angela Ferrugio, Situate, East Quogue is accepted. Town Board Resolution ID 35170, road review application for BWINBT WRE Corp., because I could find no way to pronounce that, Corporation, situated at Hampton Bays, is accepted.
All right, 35213 amends New York State Employee Benefit Quarantine Act, town policy for emergency responders.
You're in the,
On the separate packet, yeah. And 35214 authorizes the supervisor to sign a lease agreement with Stony Brook Southampton Hospital for use of Red Creek Park for COVID-19 testing.
Just for, that should say, the resolution has it the correct way, it says license agreement, it should be a license instead of a lease.
Oh, yeah, it should be a license agreement. Yeah, there's a resolution.
The resolution is correct, it has it.
And they're hoping to start that before we even pass this.
Yeah.
So,
You need an appointment for that?
oh, you do need an appointment, but
You
you do not need a prescription.
Oh, cool.
Okay, that, you do not need a prescription. but you do have to call and make an appointment. It's pretty easy to do, and it's just so everybody doesn't show up at one time. You don't have to queue for too long.
The same way we had it set up before, right?
And so, they're hoping to begin very soon there. And then 35215 amends town policy regarding COVID-19 related travel restrictions. Okay. Yeah, I mean, is that okay that they can begin before we pass the resolution?
Yeah, I think under the circumstances,
I could do it on an emergency basis for a couple days.
yeah,
So-
I think,
Does anybody have any issues with using Red Creek Park for a drive-through testing site?
No, we used it before.
We did?
Certainly not now and not this time of year.
yeah, right.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we had a drive-through up in Red Creek Park there was drive-in testing, very early on.
Yeah. I think we all got tested. I think you got tested there and it took a month, didn't it?
No, I got tested here.
Oh, I got tested at Red Creek.
Okay,
Yeah.
oh, that
We
was,
had a van
that
here,
was a
and then we
baseline
had a
health?
That was the best.
facility up at Red Creek.
Okay,
I think this
okay, so that's,
is going to be running this one as well.
does anybody, if they want to get started before the resolution pass, we can do it by executive order or whatever. Emergency order.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I mean, it's a state agency, it's Southampton Hospital, it's a state hospital.
Do we know what testing they're doing? Are they doing the antibody as well as the,
I'm not familiar.
Ryan may know, but
Yeah,
the
Ryan-
Doing
Stony
both?
Brook Hospital, I don't think they're doing antibody. I think the,
just PCR? Okay.
all right, so any, and then there's one more, I'm sorry, I forgot to read the last one. 35215 amends town policy regarding COVID-19 related travel restrictions. All right, so anybody have any questions on anything on the agenda? If you need explanations, we could bring Sandra in on some of those changes to employee policy.
I have to read it first.
Okay,
Just got it.
all right, so
this
can
morning.
we could go ahead and publish it? Make those minor changes. All right, let's change topics. Ryan, before you do your update, we have something scheduled for 10:30. Though, Tip, are you waiting for others?
Sorry?
Are you waiting for other people to join you?
Well, Peter may be outside.
All right, because in which case I'll have Ryan update us on COVID related.
There's room for them to come in.
Yeah.
There's, yeah.
He's not here.
Do you
Okay.
want?
Start whenever you're ready. Okay.
All right,
Are
so
you
we'll
willing
bring,
to-
let's bring Ryan up. We'll buy you a little more time. If you're not in a hurry, Tip. Okay. So Ryan, a lot's going on.
Yes, very lot.
So, all right, so we just sort of mentioned that we're gonna be, that we're working with Southampton Hospital and the county and the state on getting a drive-through testing site up and running in Hampton Bays.
Yeah,
And that is because we're seeing an increase in the incidence in that area, Shinnecock Hills, East Quogue, Hampton Bays, that whole area. Well, it's increasing everywhere.
yeah, we've
A
got a
little,
couple things going.
a little faster increase in those areas, but you want to kind of bring us up to date?
Yeah, sure. Let me go over the just broader picture before we get to Red Creek specifically. I did send an update email out to the board regarding some of the activities slated for Red Creek. But if there's any questions on any of that stuff, I can certainly answer them. The latest numbers we have, as of the 17th, the countywide positivity rate was 3.8%. Just to give an idea, in case anybody hasn't seen the trigger numbers that align with yellow, orange, red zone status and things like that. The state's trigger levels, and I believe this is applicable to any municipality with a 900,000 people or greater count, and then I think it also applies to cities, etc. 2.5% rate triggers yellow zone status, 3% rate triggers orange zone status, and 4% rate triggers red. So when we start to talk about positivity rates in excess of 3%, it's obviously concerning for us. Those different zones have restrictions that are attached to them in terms of, gatherings, business operations, things of that nature. So we want to try and keep ourselves from receiving, microcluster or zone status as best as we can. And one of the ways to avoid that is for enhanced testing in an area. And so that's what that effort at Red Creek is trying to satisfy right now, is to keep us from getting classified as a orange, red, yellow zone in any way, shape, or form by enhancing the community testing capabilities. There are other requirements that the school district also has to meet. 20% population sampling for the district. So for the case of Hampton Bays schools, because I've been in communication with Lars Clemenson, I know I can say that their number that they need to meet is I believe 400 people in their school population. That's between students and teachers, other staff members that have to be tested to meet the state's requirement for the amount of testing that's occurring in district to stay open as a school district. And there are a lot of districts that are all right now kind of, clamoring for testing. Is that my heart?
Talk about clamoring?
There are a lot of districts that are clamoring for testing right now, just to try and stay ahead of this. They're acting proactively, and that's a good thing. It's causing a little bit of a competition for resources out there, I think, which is something that we are familiar with and saw earlier in the pandemic with regards to masks and gloves and all sorts of sanitary PPE demands that were out there. But I think we're trying to satisfy the needs for the testing as best as we can. We have made arrangements in conjunction with Southampton Hospital, who is going to be providing the medical component of the testing. What we're bringing to the table is our site, Red Creek. There's kind of a trio of different players operating on this, and it's the town, specifically by way of Kristen and Town Parks, that are contributing the site, and it's been a big lift for Kristen. Yet again, she continues to step up and help us out whenever we've had things going on with regards to the pandemic, and definitely should be commended for her efforts on this. Had to relocate, cancel, postpone a lot of programs that were slated to occur at the community facility at Red Creek so that we could give Southampton Hospital access to the facility. They need it for their staff. They need it for storage of PPE to support the testing site, for their IT capabilities that they need to support the testing site. So that's going to be operating out of our community center there. And they will be conducting what's basically drive-up testing. As of right now, the people will be coming into the site and then walking over to a tent. We will be having a conversation with them tomorrow. I'd like to encourage that to be more drive-up and less out-of-the-car presence. But that's the current plan for it. And again, as I mentioned, I sent out an email to everybody with more details about the whole testing site. And if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer. We're also trying to help Southampton Village and Southampton schools to have testing available as well. Sandra and I have been in conversation with Baseline, which is the medical company that the town has used for many years for police physicals and other different offerings that we have. We have an agreement with them, or an MOA. We had them slated already to come in on the 24th next week to provide opportunity for staff members to have physicals, flu shots, COVID testing. We're expanding that now. As of yesterday, I've been informed that they are going to be coming to us for the 23rd, 24th, and 25th because Southampton Village and Southampton schools would also like to have community testing available. And so not only will employees be able to take advantage of Baseline being here, but members of the community, staff and families within the school district will be able to take advantage of the Baseline bus and RV being here on site to be able to provide testing for them. And that's, again, the 23rd, 24th, 25th next week. They'll be located similarly to the way they were last time, which is kind of, in the alleyway between town hall and the elementary school next door. So it's been busy trying to help coordinate a lot of this testing that's needed so that we can stay unclassified as a risk zone, and to try and help stop community spread by helping to identify any possible positives out in the community so that they take the appropriate protective actions and don't mingle with others and continue to spread the virus. We've got about 1,600 cases reported as of yesterday. That's from the beginning of the pandemic until now in Southampton. We're on a trend right now of somewhere around between the 9th and the 17th. About anywhere from 15 to 22 people increase per day within the whole township in terms of the positive test results. Thankfully, 16th and 17th held at 1,600 as per the county numbers, and are also down to, at that point, was just 15 people per day. The change between the 16th and 17th was 0. I don't know whether the numbers just haven't hit yet or if it stayed 0. It'd be great if it stayed 0. That's a good thing for us. So we're down. We were higher at about 22 people per day around the 11th and 12th, and we're down at around 15 now. Downward trend is good. Let's see if we can keep that downward trend going. But countywide, it's holding somewhere between 3.4, 3.8% positivity rate on all their testing since about the 13th or so. Outside of that, any questions about Red Creek or any of the other stuff that we've got going on? Obviously, we're still dealing with going out and doing checks to ensure COVID compliance. We had a very successful weekend this past weekend between the Fire Marshal's Office, Southampton Police Department, and State Liquor Authority. All went out together to go and do COVID compliance checks at locations. And speaking with Chief Skronecki, they went to, I believe, at least 11 different locations. Out of that, only I think 3 of them received any kind of SLA, warnings or penalties, which is good. It wasn't a high number of the ones that they visited, and 2 locations that we went to over the course of the night got some fire code violations from us. But I would say overall fairly compliant out there, just some issues that needed to be taken care of and were addressed by the task force that was out last weekend.
Ryan, can I ask you, it seems to be that the increase in numbers are largely in areas where we have a higher concentration of Hispanic individuals, and I'm wondering what we're doing in terms of Spanish language outreach. A lot of these individuals, they may live in more crowded conditions, they may carpool to work, they may work on job sites, construction sites, where they're close together or helping each other, where it really requires 2 people to be right next to each other. They may eat at these small cantinas where the limited space where they're waiting for their food. I feel like we could be doing more to do public education in Spanish. And I know I reached out to Minerva from Ola yesterday and asked her to contact you. I don't know if she had.
She did.
She did?
She did.
All right, could you speak a little to
Yeah,
that?
sure. So prior to that, we had already moved 2 of our variable message signs that we acquired during COVID to get public messaging out into the Hampton Bays area. We had one by the intersection of 24 and Montauk, and the other one was a little bit further east.
By Carvel.
Yes. And the messaging on those boards was done in both Spanish and English to try and increase public awareness, trying to make sure that people are wearing masks and maintaining social distancing. So we were actually already out ahead of it just a little bit and trying to enhance the messaging within the community. And speaking with Minerva yesterday, and also you and I had spoken to Lisa Black from the county exec's office. Lisa shared some publications, most of which were CDC publications, so we already had a lot of that stuff with us, and we're working on messaging right now, and Minerva's fully supportive of anything that we need to do in helping to get messaging out to the community for behaviors to try and minimize the spread of COVID. So we're going to localize some of the messaging that the county is using so that we make sure that we're all delivering a unified and similar message to the public. We don't want, one area to be doing something different than another, but we're going to localize it a little bit more so that it's directed to residents within the town of Southampton, and we'll be sharing that messaging, translating that messaging, and making sure that it gets circulated as best as possible. I'm hoping we can get some signage done up to maybe place into some of the stores in the area, in the front windows or whatever, to try and help get the messaging out as well, because we're probably going to have to pull those 2 variable message signs back and move them over to the Red Creek site to help tell people what they need to do when they arrive at Red Creek. So we want to try and still make sure that the messaging is out in the community, and we'll need to partner with whatever civic organizations we can to help get the word out there to do so.
I know we'd worked with the county, with Vanessa Baird Streeter, early on, at the beginning of the growing season with the migrant farm workers community. And I don't know if there was literature there, but the county should have, I believe they did prepare quite a campaign to try to reach that community.
I'll reach out to Vanessa today.
Yeah, there may be something there
Yeah.
available.
If there's something that we can use that was effective back in the spring,
Yeah.
rather than duplicate efforts here, I'll reach out to Vanessa tonight. We know each other. And,
She's great. I
we'll see
mean,
what
she
we can
did a great
do.
job with that.
Yeah.
People need to keep to the routines of mask wearing and social distancing, but I think it's important for them to know somehow that the risk level is slightly higher perhaps than it had been. The incident rate is higher. It's almost like a tanning index or, Homeland Security type of thing. Like you have an elevated level of concern. They ought to know that there's more of it in the community than there had been, and therefore the risk is higher. And the more we can do to educate, regardless of that, they should have been wearing their masks and social distancing. But maybe for some, knowing that the probability of getting COVID is a little bit higher right now, maybe that will get them to change their behaviors.
Yeah, and I think going into the holiday season, one of the new messages we need to make sure is really getting out there. The social distancing and mask wearing have been consistent throughout. We need to stress, even small household gatherings are points of spread. Even at 10, which is the current limit that's allowed by the state. If there are 10 unfamiliar people and from different, households, these are opportunities for spread to occur. So we just need people to be as careful as possible.
Yeah, I think it's.
There was a
there's
lot
all
of
kinds
post-Halloween
There's a
spread.
lot of
Yeah.
concerns out there, and one, yes, we have a vaccine coming. Knowledge of the vaccine coming may cause people to let down their guard a little bit. They shouldn't. This is the home stretch. It's probably, you should be even more vigilant, knowing you're not gonna have to live like this forever, and we want you to live through this. Somebody said to me today, the other day rather, they said, oh, if you get it, it's only 1% fatality. I said, you can't, I said, and you
Yeah,
think
1%.
that's okay, 1%? 1%. So if you have 100 people who live on your street and everybody gets COVID because nobody takes, one of those people are going to die. If that's, one of your neighbors are going to die because we decided not to wear masks and social distance. Is that acceptable? In a town with 1,000 employees, 10? Is that acceptable for 10 of our employees to die? Absolutely not. And all we have to do to prevent it is wear masks and social distance and take some other precautions. Yes, that's what we have to do. It's for ourselves, it's for the people we love, it's for the most vulnerable. It's not that difficult to do.
No, we're in the hopefully in the home stretch here. Hopefully with vaccine availability sometime in the not too distant future, that'll help things a bit. But this is where you're getting close to the finish line and you actually want to start running faster and making sure you're doing the right thing and
Right.
finish off strong.
Yeah. put it in perspective, over a quarter of a million Americans are dead now. as a result of it. So we have the opportunity to keep that number from growing if we just do these things until the
Right.
vaccines are.
We
out.
went a very long time in the county, thankfully, and in the town, with the fatalities being at, 0. We did great for a while there.
Now
And
they're
now
going
we're
up.
starting to see fatalities again and increased spread, and we need to stop that.
Absolutely. So, while you're up there, I was going to talk about this later, but I'll take a moment to talk about it now. So with the numbers being higher and with the Thanksgiving holiday upon us, where people are going to be seeing kids coming home from college, they'll be seeing relatives, there'll be more interaction. The management team that I confer with in terms of making a lot of the day-to-day decisions felt that we should take steps during this 2-week period to thin out the workforce and reduce the possibility of spread. We've had several employees who've tested positive. We've had spouses or family members of employees, within the same household. And they thought it was a prudent step to the greatest degree possible to minimize the interactions, that those who could work from home should work from home, particularly in these co-working spaces like the auditorium. Obviously, somebody who drives a truck and they're out all day by themselves, they don't have the same level of exposure. So I had a department head meeting yesterday. Ryan was there, and not in a mandatory fashion, but I basically asked all the department heads to develop a plan for basically thinning out, being able to continue all the town services and functions that we deliver, but reduce density in these kind of co-working spaces by as much as 50%. And they're all submitting plans that Ryan and Sandra will review. They don't have to, if they can only reduce by 10%. The goal is to try to reduce by 50% if they can, but to the best of their abilities. Some departments won't be able to reduce at all. By the nature of the department, we may be able to come up with structural ways to better protect them, spreading them out a little further than perhaps they might be working today. But Ryan, did you want to talk about that?
No, it's, everything that you said is 100% accurate. The idea is to, at any given point, as best as we can, to protect half of our staff to ensure that we have a bench to continue to deliver the services that our residents expect from us. If everyone is in the room at the same time and a positive person walks into that room, we lose a whole department. We lose capacity to perform what we need to do. So the thought here, it's not off days, it's remote days and physical and in-person days is what it is. And the thought here is just to try and have kind of an A team, B team alternating if possible, so that if something were to go wrong, if somebody were to have an interaction, an exposure risk, we have another half of the staff that can continue to deliver those services. We've had, as the supervisor mentioned, a couple of instances that came close to that. There were close calls almost, where we could have run into a situation where it would have been challenging for us to deliver the services that we need to, and we want to make sure that we don't have those types of situations. That we've isolated out people so that if we had to send half the team home, we can call the other half and tell them to come on in. Get off the computer at home and come on into the office. We're swapping out teams, and so that's really just the idea here, is to make sure that we've got depth.
And IT is providing all the support to allow this to happen so that people can continue to be equally productive from their homes as they might be at town hall.
Yeah.
So whether it's scanners, whether it's laptops, whatever it is that they would need to be able to communicate, get all the work processed from
Yes.
their home space.
And what we do here, we have a requirement from the state to submit a COVID plan for the town by February. The plans that are being put together right now for this 50% reduction and in-person presence these are types of things that we will be incorporating into our townwide plan that will be part of our February submission to the state to meet the requirements. So this is all working towards a goal that we were meeting, what we're intending to meet, and we're working on already, at the same time that it protects
And
our
we're
staff.
also implementing a reduced amount of people in town hall as well, with the ability to notify individuals who are waiting to get in through text messaging as to when, the building inspector is available to talk to them. Do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. Right now, we're going to try and keep the same number of passes available as long as we can for town hall interactions. We're not, as of right now, we're not going back to any kind of, a forced appointment system or anything like that, which we did as we phased back into operation in the spring. Obviously, we're going to continue to evaluate that as we go on with the 50% reduction in in-person staffing. If we have to go from, 4 passes to a department down to 3, we'll take those actions as necessary. We're gonna evaluate it as we go. We're also
But
the
it's more
IT
addressing-
department is working on a queuing system, which will have kind of a kiosk set up, and I believe our intention is to try and roll this out for, bless you, the building department first, who is one of our most highly trafficked departments.
So we don't
in
get
town
that
hall.
queue in the hallway downstairs.
Yes, it'll allow people to sign up on the queuing system when they show up here, put in their information. It's kind of like going to a restaurant, and it'll text you when your table's ready. It'll text you when there's an inspector ready or whoever at the building department to meet with you and review your plans. We're also encouraging more Zoom usage and meetings like that, which is, a platform where and there are many others, whether it's, Google Meetup or this, that, or the other thing, where you can share documents on the screen and be able to have a good
It's
conversation.
like
about what you're
telemedicine,
looking at.
basically.
Yep. Yep, so
Rather
these
than
are all steps that we're
Talk,
trying
rather
to
than
take.
talk at the counter to the inspector, you can talk via Zoom. It makes
Right.
total sense.
Right. So hopefully these combination of efforts will keep the public presence down a little bit inside town hall. The idea is just to minimize the number of people that have to be in one space at one time where there's a possibility you might have some sort of an exposure risk. That's it's the same thing everybody's doing in their own personal lives. We're implementing those same types of measures here.
Do you guys have any questions for Ryan?
Right, is there a point where we get to where they start shutting down the restaurants and the businesses again? Are we getting close to that?
We're trying to test out of that.
Okay.
Is what we're doing right now. We're trying to make sure that those are the orange and red zoning type things where we would have the possibility that, say, a restaurant might have to go back to takeout only as opposed to allowing any kind of in-person. So we're right now, any jurisdictions, and we're by far not the only one. With the positivity rate of 3.8% countywide, there are other jurisdictions out there that are battling the same thing, wanting to stay out of being, microcluster categorized. So the big reason is not just to keep the schools open, it's to keep everything open, because once we start to fall into orange zone, red zone status, the risk level gets to a point that we have to start shutting other things down too, not just the schools. And we know if we shut the schools down with childcare issues, it causes huge impacts to the labor force, with people having to try and find ways to have their children watched at the same time that they can go to work. So it's very impactful, and yeah, one of the conditions that might have to change if we do fall into one of those categories is that businesses may have to go back to restrictions as well, whether it's restaurants or other retail facilities, and we don't want to fall backwards. This is having a huge impact on health, obviously. It's a virus. It's been devastating. As you said, 250,000 people have already died in the U.S. as a result of it, but it's also been hugely impactful on the economy, and we don't need to see people have to go back to being in an out-of-work condition or where they don't have access to the things that they need. So we need to try and stay open, and the only way that can happen is a whole community approach to this.
And is testing out the only way to stay out of that red zone, or does there come a point with your test results that you would be put into a red zone no matter what?
If the numbers don't go down, you stand the chance of being a zone classified. The idea, so by testing, you're going to do two different things. The reason we're testing is to try and identify potential people that could spread it within the population. One of the impacts of testing also, though, could be dilution of the sample. So we have to be very careful on how we look at things. And just because a percentage goes down, we have to actually look at, and I know that the supervisor's been paying attention to it, I have, Chief Skrzynecki has, we have to look at the actual number of positive cases each day in a jurisdiction to see whether we're being successful or not. Because if we can still continue to have case numbers go up, but if you test enough more people, your percentage positive goes down. So we really have to drill down into the data and make sure we're looking to see, are we being successful? Are the positive case numbers going down in the long term? Right away, it might go up because of the increased availability of testing. But we have to look at the long term. If the case numbers are going down, then we're doing the right thing and we're having success. We can't just look at purely at the positivity rate, although obviously that's a good indicator that we want to see that number go down, but we have to be careful not to mask the problem.
No, but Ryan's
Yeah.
right, and that's why, like, my focus has primarily been on the number of new cases compared to the population of the area. So, and I track that every day, every day. So the other number can be deceiving. If you get a lot more people being tested who have no symptoms and just coming in for free testing, it
Dilutes it.
may mask a real issue. It might say, oh, you're only getting 1 out of 100, but you're testing positive. But if you have thousands of people coming in, I think it's more important for, at least for me, to look
Number of
at the
positives.
pure number of positives.
Yeah, because
But I-
conversely, if people are going to test because they have symptoms and somebody says, I don't want to bother to get tested because I don't have any symptoms, so you could also get,
Yeah,
Right,
we
so
have to look at the case.
the
Yeah.
benefit, as Ryan said, is by having more people get tested, we might actually pick up some asymptomatic cases and things like
Yeah.
that, which could have turned into a much larger spread.
And the zoning classification is largely based on percent positive rate in a region.
I've also been
So
concerned.
we want to look at the deeper numbers. Yeah, we want to stay out of the zone, but we have to make sure that we don't still have a problem behind it, even with the positivity.
Well,
rate
you're trying to
going down.
react in real time here,
So,
that you need
yeah.
to have those daily numbers to know that,
Yes.
otherwise.
I've had this concern, particularly with this population of actually symptomatic people not getting tested. That maybe they don't have a primary care physician who can write them a script, maybe they can't afford to get the test, so it's really important that you do not need a prescription for this testing. You don't have to pay anything for it. So, we need to get these people to come in and get tested so that,
That,
the
and that's
people who
at
are-
Red Creek. At Red Creek.
yeah.
The baseline is a private vendor. It'll process through insurance if you have it, and then I believe that there's a fee if it's somebody that's not covered by insurance,
Right.
because it's a private contractor. But the other one is being run by a combination of the state and county, so it's supposed to be a free testing site at Red Creek.
Yeah.
And
So-
who can sign up for that? Is it just townwide or countywide or
The one at
state?
Red Creek?
Yes.
Anyone. It's
Anyone.
intended to target the local population, which
Which
is why it's
would-
being set up there, but
Right.
you could be passing through the area and go to that testing site. I believe it's completely unrestricted. My understanding from speaking with Southampton Hospital yesterday, we had a conference call at 2:15. They are going to be encouraging appointments, but they will be taking walk-ups as well.
Oh, good.
Now, I will tell you, if you can make an appointment, if you want to go to the site, I would encourage the appointment. And I say this because we asked them, what do we think the numbers are going to be? How many people do you think are going to show up? They have one site in East Hampton right now, but they had another site out in Montauk earlier. The Montauk site, when it was functional, was similar to what we're talking about. No script required, free site. They did about 100 to 120 people per day. The East Hampton site that they're running right now is doing about 80 a day. There's a script required at that site. So I think we need to look at apples to apples on this one and say it's going to be a little bit more like the Montauk site where it was free and you could even just kind of walk up. And so 100 to 120 people per day between the hours of, like 9 and 4, it could get busy at different points. So if there's a link that they put out or that we help put out with appointment capability, I would encourage that. Otherwise, they did indicate that they would take out walk-ups as well.
The county is also, and I don't know where this is right now, but they're also working on opening up a site in
In
Riverhead
Riverhead.
somewhere.
Yes.
So.
We've offered, if they want it, the Flanders Civic Center as another possibility, the community center there, the lot. But they do want something actually in Riverhead. And again, I think it's to meet requirements of the state for.
But that will be available too, people, from West Hampton or.
Yes,
It's not that far, West Hampton, East Quogue, Hampton Bays.
and the days of operation for Red Creek are currently slated to be Mondays and Wednesdays. It's opening tomorrow, but Mondays and Wednesdays is their plan right now, after tomorrow.
And the Riverhead site will be the same in terms of anyone can go, it's
Yes.
free, no prescription necessary, so,
Yes.
okay. Any other questions for Ron?
No, just a comment, though. I mean, our goal is to identify people and that they can identify themselves to help flatten this curve.
Exactly.
So that we can prevent the spread.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the goal of testing.
And keep the economy going to the extent that we can, keep people
Correct.
working, keep
Correct.
people safe.
And with the town restrictions that we're doing on the workplace, the reason why we picked 2 weeks is because of that incubation period too. So we kind of want to wait till Thanksgiving comes and goes and make sure people don't become symptomatic.
Yes, and we'll have to keep watching it. to
And then
see.
we might extend it based on the numbers at that time. We saw after Halloween a surge, we just saw a pop in the numbers. And, I think there's a likelihood after Thanksgiving that could happen as well, so. I'm hoping though, after 2 weeks, we're able to go back to where we are today in terms of the way we're managing our staff. All right,
Keep an eye on it.
all right, no other questions about that? Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, Ryan.
Tip, I don't know if any of your other folks are here. If not, I'm gonna ask you to do it all by yourself.
Great.
So, John, do you want to introduce this? This, I think, is you. No?
Well, this is an update from what you were presented before this COVID hit and contemplating legislation to ban the use of helium-filled balloons, particularly because of their
Sale.
reach. And, the sale of balloons. So Tip's been the driver on this, and it's accumulated a lot of data to support that. I think we did a survey at one point.
The results are in here.
And so we'll
Yeah.
let
It's
Tip go for it.
basically the same presentation I gave about a year ago with the addition of the survey results, which the supervisor had asked for. How does this thing work?
I'm advancing it for you, Tip.
Oh, okay.
Just let me know when you want me to.
Okay. This is the proposed law. I have hard copies of this, if you'd like.
I can read it, but I'd like to have
Okay.
it, if you could forward it to us later by email, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. These are the towns that we looked at as far as experience with existing laws. Y is a quote from the law that was passed on plastic bags and previous efforts. Whoop, do back,
Go back
please.
one? Sorry.
But the important why is here. I mean, we all know their litter. We've all seen them. I walked out in my front yard the other day and was greeted by a Mylar balloon that said, "Happy birthday." But my birthday's not until March.
It's early.
Yeah. The balloon, people have talked about balloons that are biodegradable. It doesn't take much searching on the web to find experiences where people leave these biodegradable balloons in their backyard for years and they're still there. So, yeah, I suppose eventually they may degrade, but in practice, and with wildlife eating it and just trash, they don't degrade quickly. And also important, which we don't think about, but our neighbor at the Stony Brook Hospital uses liquid helium. I was in the hospital there a few weeks ago, and they gave me an MRI, and it was cooled, of course, by liquid helium. So there are some very important uses for this substance, which, although in the universe it's widespread, on Earth it's not. Now, the town survey, there were two questions. Do balloons released into the environment present a danger to the environment and to wildlife? And as you can see, a resounding 92% said yes. And then regarding the question as to whether the town should prohibit the sale, distribution, and release, again, a 2-to-1 response. And there were 569 responses to the first question, 574 responses to the second. I don't have a great memory, I just looked it up. And the business surveys come out, I guess, more or less where you'd expect. This is a case where there's no question that some businesses will lose sales because of this. And of those 10 who responded, 4 supported, 6 objected. They didn't want to lose business. And those, yeah.
Okay.
These are the areas surveyed. Again, it's the same as last year. And the education program is shown here, which, assuming we proceed and that the law is passed, we'd go into an education program, give people plenty of time to prepare. So our recommendation is the town should prohibit the sale, distribution, and release of any type of balloon filled with a lighter than air gas. We'll have an education program. There are 2 exceptions to that, obviously. If it's a government survey, a balloon, but those are specified in the first slide. And surveys show widespread support for this.
Do you want,
Well, these are backup slides that I had prepared. You don't need to show those unless we have questions.
All right, so you want to go to questions?
Sure.
Yeah, let me start by, one thing I often hear when this matter is discussed, and I don't know if there's any veracity to it, but the balloons, a lot of the balloons don't come from here. They come from, they're released in New Jersey or Connecticut or something like that, and somehow manage to end up on our beaches or in the ocean and gets washed onto the beach. Is there any truth to that? A large percentage of the balloons that we're getting on the beach are from other areas outside of, our
The
catchment
answer is,
area?
I don't know, and frankly, I'm not sure how anyone would know. I mean, they don't come with tags on them, it said made in Jersey. So I think the odds are against it simply because when the balloons go up, it's not terribly long before they'll burst. And therefore, they're probably come down near where they're released. I doubt that we get lots of them traveling 100 miles from New Jersey.
Now, we already passed a law that prohibits the intentional release of balloons. And I don't know to what degree we're enforcing that, or whether the beaches, or the balloons that I see on the beaches are, if they are from the intentional release, or whether it was the unintentional release of those balloons, they got away somehow. I'm wondering, because, banning the sale is a big step, right? And it will affect, a couple of the stores that do sell these things. Is there an interim measure where you could require that any of these balloons that are sold tethered to a weight that is sufficient to keep the balloon from drifting off. So if a kid lets it go, it's just gonna go right down to the ground. It's not gonna go up into the air. You know, a metal washer, a lead sinker, well, maybe not lead, maybe that's a problem too, but, you know, or some kind of weight that you could attach to it. If you're gonna sell the balloon, it's gotta be attached to something heavier than the balloon.
Obviously, it's possible. I mean, my own experience, I've released these balloons unintentionally as I walked out of the store. You know,
That's my experience too. You didn't mean to do it, they
You don't-
snuck away.
do it on purpose. So
But
I think the best way to handle this, and which particularly addresses the uses of helium also, which the lead weights, of course, would not. Whatever balloon you walk out of the store that's got helium inside it, the helium is going to end up in the atmosphere and in outer space. It's not going to be used to cool MRIs.
Right, so that's sort of a different, it's an important issue, but it's a different issue.
It's a
The
different
waste of- The
issue.
waste of a resource for entertainment purposes rather than for medical purposes, and I understand that's a limited resource. But if the town board were, let's say, to engage in public education on this issue, and we were to require that any vendor who sells these balloons, they must be tethered as an interim measure, and see if that reduces the number of balloons on the beach. And if it doesn't, then go to the more stringent measure of prohibiting the sale, which will have an economic impact.
I don't even know how we measure that. We don't have specific data that, okay, as of March 1st and April 1st, we found X balloons on the beach.
Surfrider might, though.
Uh,
I know they keep count of what they find.
They keep count on an annual basis of, you can find annual counts of balloons that people found, but no one checks all the beaches. It's a sampling.
Tip, have some of the other municipalities who have passed similar laws looked into things like that? I noticed two of the municipalities that passed laws. One is in Massachusetts, Nantucket, it's a county and it's a town. New Shoreham is actually Block Island, that's a town in Rhode Island. They may have numbers like this, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they're islands to the east of us. They're probably getting a significant number of balloons washing up on their shores. We are in the westerlies, and I think to the supervisor's point, we are probably most likely getting balloons from west, migrating
Right.
our way. This would be a statement, but I'm wondering if those municipalities have numbers of, balloons that they have found on their beaches.
I did the research on this, as you probably know. I haven't found anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I could actually answer that a little bit. Anecdotally, the amount of garbage that's picked up on beaches, so I just want to make a separation a little bit here, because it's not just what you find on a beach, but the environmental impacts are what lands in the water.
Sure.
And what's consumed. And if you start to look at that, and I think actually in Massachusetts, they did, that was part of their study, because they were able to, the way their currents work, they actually, I think there was a small gyre, and, I'm one of those guys who actually, have been in the Pacific Gyre and have seen balloons, and they behave differently in the water. It's kind of interesting, but their consumption by wildlife, and that's the big deal. So what you have on the beach is one representation, but what's actually ending up in the environment and ending up in your food, in your fish, that you don't see. It becomes microscopic. It becomes part of the flesh of a lot of the fish that we consume. That's not a good thing. So that's one of the reasons why I think Tip suggests and pushed pushes hard.
I
to-
think
Right,
it's
and
clear
this
which-
is
which-
about the microplastics breaking down into the
Yes.
environment as well as.
That's
other-
part of it,
I
yeah,
get it.
that's-
yeah.
And I was wondering if the towns there, yeah, actually would, like, quantifying what they
Not-
found on their
not to
beaches
my
or something like
knowledge.
that.
It's
Well,
a-
we know
Yeah.
what you can derive a number just by examining what you collect, like on the beach cleanups. and
I want to know where
what you
that
can
gyre
interpolate
is, by
from
the
that.
way.
yeah.
I-
Well, there's 5 of them, the ones in the
Off of-
Pacific.
off of
Yeah.
Long
It comes
Island?
and goes, apparently, it's,
But this is clearly beyond the microplastics are part of it as they break down into tiny little pieces, but the larger pieces are often mistaken for jellyfish or man of war or
they're
whatever.
consumed, yeah.
They're consumed, and the animals strangle on it. I mean, this is a noble pursuit. I appreciate you pushing us in a way to be on the front edge of this, like we did with the plastic bags. I just, I wrestle with it because, my memories as a child with helium balloons are some of the joyous memories of my youth, and, every birthday had helium balloons. And, okay, we live and we learn and we change. And, probably if there was a way to do this, if there was a substitute, we will migrate to it and we'll find other ways to celebrate those happy occasions. That's why I'm sort of struggling to see if there may be an interim step.
Well, let me respond to that specific suggestion with an anecdote of mine. My wife, Grania, whom most of you know, loves helium-filled balloons. So every birthday, we had helium-filled balloons, and we would tie them to our mailbox securely. And at the end of the day, some of them would always be gone. The answer is the wind's a funny thing. Just because you tie it to a weight initially doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And
Yeah, I know.
and also, you don't have to give up balloons. It's the helium.
Right. And
So you can still have
Notice,
balloons.
yeah, they use them, a birthday's a birthday, a wedding's a wedding. Wedding's a big event, right? It's
Right.
once in a lifetime. Some people maybe 2 or 3 times.
Or more.
Yeah, but, birthdays are every year. But then I see these open houses, for real estate companies, they're doing balloons to mark the house or to draw attention to the sign. Like, I think that's like the first thing, that should go, right? You should not be able to use it for that type of purpose. So I don't know. I'm concerned that maybe, we go too far in the first step and that maybe we take smaller steps, maybe restrict some of the purposes. Certainly helium balloons for advertising could be out. Sale of helium balloons that are untethered could be out. Maybe public education, but doing the big jump that I know you want us to do, which is to ban the sale, I don't know that I'm there yet, to be honest. I'm wrestling with it. And because I go to the beach a lot. And that's what I'm picking up off the beach is these helium balloons. And it has bothered me for years and years and years. And I see other people carrying helium balloons off the beach, and it's sort of disgusting too, but they're picking up other people's waste. And I'm sure when Rick did his, beach cleanup, I bet they found lots of helium balloons. I found a whole group of helium balloons on a beach, much worse than the picture you have there. It must have been somebody's archway that they created for a wedding. And there must have been 50 balloons all tied together on the beach. It is a real problem. There's no question about it. I just, you're asking us to pass legislation that does the full jump.
Well,
And this,
yeah.
and maybe we will. I don't know if somebody would have to introduce it. I'm suggesting sort of an in-between jump that I'd love to work with you on, that maybe isn't everything that you're hoping for, but halfway there.
Tim, I saw you had a slide about municipalities. There were none around here. Are there any municipalities within Suffolk County or adjacent to Southampton that have passed this?
Not to
something
my
like that?
knowledge,
Okay.
no.
And there isn't a big balloon lobby either, you know, if you look at the survey and the businesses that Tip had spoken with, that, to me, I was actually surprised, and given the supervisor's point of view, that, you know, that it did not appear to be a primary economic focus of that particular business.
Well, I did.
There's a
Some do,
balloon store,
and
actually.
some don't.
Some do,
Yeah,
and
and that's
sometimes
the
it's
problem.
one of the few things that they make money on. Like I talked to a local pharmacy, and he said, that's like one thing that I can count on to give me a little extra cash.
Yeah, and there, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but in the whole, in the aggregate. The other half of that story, though, is that you have stores that are outside of our jurisdiction, right on our borders, that sell helium.
Right.
You know, that you can.
And that was
fill
gonna
your
be
own
my
balloons
next
with,
comment.
You know?
Yes.
Which is, that's problematic
Right.
too. So, you know, how much impact doing this actually has is hard to measure. You know, you can measure the balloons on the beach, and actually that's a good thing because those didn't end up in the environment. They actually got pulled away. They were lucky that they got on the beach as opposed to where they do the real damage, which is in the water.
Well, and that's kind of what my question was, is if we don't allow the sale of them here, somebody is gonna go to Riverhead and possibly bring them back
Yep,
here.
and that's all
then
been
we're-
discussed.
We're,
Yes.
Or
you
you
know,
could go to
We
Kmart
talked
and you
about
could
that.
buy the tank
the tank and fill them up
and fill them
yourself,
up
right?
yourselves, because
I think the best that this would do is reduce. I mean, I calculated roughly, excuse me, 85,000 balloons. Now, I go to Sag Harbor when I buy my helium balloons. In fact, one of the ladies is the wharf shop. And we talked to her, said, what do you think? She says, they ought to be banned. For her, it's not a big part of her business, I suppose, and she has a sense of what we should have out there and what we shouldn't. But it will reduce significantly. If I had to drive to Riverhead and buy a helium tank,
right. Well, you wouldn't.
go
you
with
could-
air-filled balloon.
You could potentially
Yeah,
buy it
exactly.
at Stop and Shop in the village of Southampton, because we can't ban the sale there. So,
Right,
um,
we can't.
or
but
go to
they
East
might.
Hampton, or, I mean, maybe this is one of those things where we should team up with all the towns and villages on both the North and the South Fork and sort of try to do it all as one. You know, some people might, some of these areas, and I work with the East End Supervisors and Mayors Association, I'm the chairman. Some of them might say, if we all do it together, they're willing to do it. It just takes some of the heat off, you know? So they might sign on to something, if everybody does it together, we'll do it. And that could be interesting, and then it could have a much larger impact, because, you know, areas like Riverhead would be affected by it.
Well, conversely, if you didn't have a Southampton Town bag ban, you probably would not now have a statewide.
Oh, yeah, no, we could absolutely go first.
We were looking at this as a go-first situation.
I know.
What you're saying is true, and we could talk to, in fact, I did talk to the Supervisors Association years ago on these subjects. We could try it. It's an enormous task, frankly, unless all the supervisors leaped on the bandwagon, which they won't.
Yeah, some will not. But I do think,
It's interesting,
like,
though.
like if we do ban it, I think there's a store on County Road 39, that's a primary business, is selling balloons. It's out by
The
Goldberg's.
party store? Or what do they
I think it's
call
like a
that, the
balloon
party?
store or something. Maybe it's flowers and balloons or something like that. But, you know, if we ban it, that business might go out of business. And in a time when businesses are so, like, there's so many businesses going out of business, so they're struggling. And if all we're doing is we're forcing the people then to go into Southampton Village to buy it at another store, what have we actually done? We haven't reduced the number of balloons, we've just put a business out of business.
I don't know whether they go out of business or not, because they can still sell balloons. It would be a question of helium-filled balloons.
They could sell, yeah,
They could sell
Also,
helium balloons,
Uh,
but,
If we had taken that approach with the plastic bag ban, we wouldn't have passed it.
I mean, the profit
And
is
it
in the
changed, it
helium.
had a big impact.
I understand that, and I remember that's the plastic bag ban, like yesterday. And I remember there was at least one councilwoman who wasn't supportive of it, wanted to try public education first, very similar to something that, that I'm saying. It was not immediate. It was a long struggle to get that to be on the books. It wasn't overnight. And you're facing a little bit of that too, where I think we're trying to make sure that we're balanced, that if we're going to take a strong action like banning the sale, that it's actually going to lead to the result you're talking about, which is a reduction of balloons in the environment, or is it just going to push the sale into other areas that don't have the restriction? I think those are valid concerns. Have we tried public education before we jump to banning the sale? Because it shouldn't be the very first thing you go to. You should try some of these other measures, so.
Of course, it isn't in a sense that Suffolk County and Southampton Town have banned the intentional release.
Yes.
So
So has East Hampton.
that's the first step.
I don't know that that's been effective.
Hey.
I really, it might.
It wasn't in my front yard the other day.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the public is becoming more aware of this issue. And yeah, people should, anyone who releases a balloon intentionally, they should be ashamed of themselves, literally ashamed of themselves. There's no valid basis to do that. But I don't know if anybody's gotten a ticket for doing it. And most of the releases,
It's hard to enforce.
as you've said, most of the releases of helium balloons are unintentional. Except for like if it's a sporting event or something and, they're just releasing them into the air as part of a celebration. I think that should never happen personally. There's other ways to celebrate a big event.
Tip, another area that I'd like you to look into, if you would, is with Mylar balloons, they have a metallic coating on the outside. And I'm seeing that a lot of the electric company, PSE&G, has reported an increase in outages caused by Mylar balloons and shorting wires, or, it's probably causing some issues there. And I'm wondering, in Suffolk County, to what extent do Mylar balloons, affect our infrastructure and our electric system?
It happened in Southampton Village.
There was a fire
Yep.
because of it.
Recently,
Really?
well, the last couple of years.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
it
and by
can
the way,
happen.
they're really hard to put out. You can't put water on them, so you have to shut the electric off and
Well,
take them
and-
apart. But that's also another data point, I think, that would be germane to this, if we're considering this.
Well, we can try to find that out. I know it's happened, we all know, I'm sure in California, a couple of the forest fires were started by,
Well, let me ask the board.
Well, that was the
ESC&G
intent of the
actually
New
has-
York State law, because it actually came from upstate, because people were releasing balloons with open fires on them as part of celebration, and that started.
The
forest
Chinese
fire.
lantern.
Yeah.
yeah.
And let me ask the board, and don't feel like you have to respond to this. We have a lot of information. We have a survey that showed 2-to-1, people supported the prohibition of the sale. We have taken some steps, in terms of the unintentional or the intentional release and banning that. I have suggested maybe an interim approach with some public education and some limitations on the sale or use of helium balloons that I think is enforceable. No one yet has brought forward legislation prohibiting the sale. We did see in the survey that some of the commercial establishments were concerned about it, more than not. Julie brought some anecdotal information in about somebody who said that it would really hurt their business model. What do you guys want to do? And that range just could be from nothing, leave it alone, the law is fine, some interim measure, the all-out ban of the sale. And I don't know who wants to start with this.
Well, I'll start, because, we had presented this to the board, about a year ago, and that was in anticipation of legislation. And then there was a lot of reaction and good comment and good back and forth. You wanted a survey. I think the survey, shows pretty clearly how people feel about it. There's clearly an emotional reaction, and then there's an economic reaction, and those are the things that you try to balance. I come from it more from the emotional standpoint because I've seen it. I have images in my head of sea animals that I've seen, mammals in particular, that get wrapped up in these things and they have torturous. It's a horrible experience to see. In addition to all the other things that we know to happen as far as microplastics, and I think it's generally accepted around the world that these are not good things, and you see legislation rolling forth from other communities at large. The comment of whether we should, start at the root cause. I like root cause solutions because they solve everything. But in this case, if there's a way of finding balance, I would be willing to look at that. But I also think that it's important that, if I have this image of somebody coming in to buy a bunch of helium-filled balloons for advertising, and the person in the store now becomes the enforcer. What are you going to use that for?
No, the police would enforce it if they saw the
If
helium
they saw it,
balloon on
but
the sign.
that-
Your
yeah.
cop car driving by, the law says you can't
That's
use
sort
it
of
for
like
advertising.
saying,
That would be the point.
that
where
would be
that's-
difficult, but it might have some effect. I don't know.
To me, that's enforceable because, it's easy to educate them on the real estate sales community, but also the police car driving by sees the sign, if somebody reports it, there's a helium balloon tied to a for sale sign.
Yeah,
And
I don't know if
they
we'll
can
have, the real estate market in here next week with,
Yeah.
I don't know how to react to that. I feel personally myself that I think there's a balance. I would love to see somebody, Tip, yourself or someone, go to at your invitation, supervisor, and talk about that with the Association of Mayors and Supervisors and see what kind of reaction you get. Because I think you might be surprised at the reaction you get.
I'm sort of surprised, actually, that we haven't heard from the real estate business negatively. I mean, basically, they'll tie air-filled balloons to their mailboxes instead of helium-filled balloons. They'll save a few pennies per balloon. And
I think they're
they'll still
cheaper,
get the
right?
attention.
Yeah, they could tie regular balloons, they just couldn't tie helium,
Yeah, and I think they do that.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this issue?
Yeah, if I could, Tip, thank you
Yep.
for the presentation. It's the second time I've seen it. And I have some issues with some of the stats that you throw out, 85,000, balloons in the town of Southampton. I don't really know if you could tell us how you came about that number.
I can, in fact,
Somebody's trying to communicate with us.
let me out.
Like, come in.
Yes, sounds like they may come in shortly.
Yeah, the wall may come down, sure.
The pro balloon group there.
Yeah, that's
Balloon lobby?
that's the balloon lobby over there.
It proved very difficult on the internet to get a number for balloons, helium-filled balloons sold. The best I could find was in California in 2008. They proposed a law to ban these balloons in the state legislature. Now, as we all know, it's easier to lobby a state legislature than 1,000 towns. And the law was not passed, but as part of it, the industry came up with a number, okay? And their number was 45 million Mylar balloons were sold in California in 2008. That's this is just Mylar. That's 1.23 balloons per person in California. I took that and made the per person transition to Southampton, which on a weighted average basis, our population is roughly 105,000 over the whole year. That adds up to 310 balloons. In California, in Southampton, discarded per year. And I took a flying leap and said, I assume 2/3 are helium filled. Now, my guess is the number may be higher, but that's the number I used. Okay, and that turned out to be 85,000 balloons, and it's easy to calculate how much helium is used. There's a standard for that, it's how much it takes to fill a balloon. That's 433,000 cubic feet of helium. So that's how it was done. That was 2008. Numbers like this don't go down.
So it's a very big we're in a very big ballpark. We're getting close, all right? But I
So-
agree with John. I've seen the end product. I mean, we've all seen the pictures of the turtles and the wildlife and the marine life, choking on a string or a balloon. It's a horrific thing. But there are many pieces in between that and what we're doing here. My concerns were the same, John. We've talked about this before. I said, I'm going to open up a balloon shop 2 miles outside in Riverhead, and I'm going to start delivering balloons. This legislation's not going to stop that. And I disagree with the 100 miles that a balloon, I've done my research too, that a mile-long balloon could go 20,000 feet and can go up to 1,000 miles. I mean, the numbers you see when you research this are all over the board.
It can.
Yeah, they can
Yeah.
be. So, I don't know, it's a ridiculous notion, but could we take a little bit of time and mark the balloons at the establishment? And just kind of see, I mean, I just don't know that, to me, should be a county-wide effort. Like, I think what we do here today, like you say, it may just be a really small drop in the bucket. And I'd love to see the Supervisors Association take it up, or even try to get this to the county level up. If the rest of the board, who's been here quite a bit longer than I have, says this is the step we have to take to get it to the county level, just like the bag ban, then I will definitely support it. But I think we need a bigger effort, Tip. I think it's a great thing, but I think we need a much bigger effort on it.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that's exactly sort of how I always hope these things work. And so immediately when this was proposed, and I think, Julie, you had sat with Sarah Anker and some other people in the legislature who were working on similar initiatives, and because I find it's a better lead, sort of the reverse of what happened with the plastic bag ban, but I think the attitudes have changed a little bit. So there was more receptivity, for lack of a better word, to this concept from the legislature than I believe that you guys had experienced originally with the plastic bag ban. It's a different lobby, the plastic bags, these are different lobbies. The balloon still doesn't hurt the manufacturer, because if you're saying, let's not use helium-filled balloons, let's use air-filled balloons, then you're really not, you're not impacting as hard as you might think. And one other thing I want to add is that Chip is a nuclear engineer, so his best guess is better than most calculations.
Well, if it is 85,000 balloons released in the town of Southampton, then 18 businesses is not a good sample.
That's true.
We have to kind
Yeah.
of do a little more research on that.
Right, and I understand certainly to say if we go first, others will follow, I understand that, and I'm not afraid to be first here too, but, I've also been through a lot of these kinds of debates, whether it was on energy drinks, banning electronic cigarettes. It's usually, the truth is more nuanced, and and we have come up with legislation that has addressed most of the issues without the draconian measure of the all-out prohibition. So, and certainly if everybody in the area were willing to do it, yes, of course. But if it's just us, maybe there's this interim step that may not be everything you want, but it could address a lot of it. It's just my thinking. I don't know. Julie, what's your thinking on it?
Well, first, Tip, thank you for your passion on all things environmental. I appreciate it. I am not a fan of balloons for all the reasons mentioned. I also don't like them because when they pop, they scare me. However, I did have concerns about this prior to COVID and now afterwards with the economic impact. And now, and during, and hopefully after soon COVID, I really do worry about the local businesses. And there might not be a lot of them, but to some of them, it may make a big difference. And to do this now, to me, I would have to think long and hard to try to figure out what that balance is. I would love to do something interim. I don't know what that looks like. I think you came up with some good ideas. You know, how based in reality those are, whether they can be done, but I think that it behooves us to take a look and try to see if we can do some sort of middle ground for now. Our businesses are suffering, and that to me, it kind of, you know, that weighs on me.
Tommy John, you got any thoughts?
Sure, quite a few. Thank you, Tip, as well, for bringing this to us, and really the Sustainability Committee and the work that you do is important. I am interested in these Mylar balloons. They seem to be new, right? But they were developed in the 1980s, 1990s. When I was a kid,
Fairly new.
the balloons were pretty lame, and you know,
All relative.
they didn't last very long.
I hate to burst your balloon.
But, you know, so now, right, I was wondering when this was going to start coming, but if you could hold off. So now we have Mylar balloons in the shape of all kinds of things.
Floating it
and,
out there.
you know, they've really, you know, I think ramped up production of these. I would be curious to know what the effect is and what the cost is on Mylar balloons on electric lines. You know, and I think that's a significant data point if we're talking about what it's costing a community. You know, and, you know, what is that cost when you have a Mylar balloon wrapped around a high-tension line? You know, and I'm just wondering if PSEG has, you know, quantifiable numbers on sending people up there to, you know, take these things off. It's not inexpensive. And, you know, I don't have that information, you know, so I look to you, you know, and others to provide that. In addition, you know, most of the effects, we don't see the effects. The effects are in the waters, and it's not lost on me that other maritime communities have banned the sale of these products here. So I think it's not necessarily quantifiable to us at this time, the effects on marine life. You know, the fishing industry probably has an idea of the effects, probably more than we do, and that would be interesting to ask them what they think about this. But if we were to ban it, it would be a very strong message to municipalities in the rest of the area, including, you know, Suffolk County and you know, maybe the state of New York. I am convinced with, you know, no scientific, well, I am convinced that what we are seeing is coming here from other areas. And it could be a message to other areas that we are banning this. Please ban, you know, in the release of or the sale of these balloons, because they are washing up, well, not just washing up, they are getting into our environment. And which, by the way, when that happens, it gets into us. So, you know, let's be, you know, clear on that. We are connected to this. So we've seen the successful recycling of car batteries that seem to be onerous for businesses. In addition to the plastic bag bans that really started in the village of Southampton, way to go, and then we took it up in Suffolk County, and now the state. And not only that, air conditioning with the recapturing of Freon in air conditioning system. Now it's part of the industry. So, you know, we have made changes, and it is important that, you know, that people know that balloons are not necessarily benign. They're cute, they're pretty, colorful, make kids, you know, but they are not benign. They do have an effect. And I think, like I said earlier, you know, with the electric lines, I really wonder what that number is. And I don't know it. We will.
I can,
Yeah. And then also the effect on the environment. So that's where I'm at. And, you
So
know,
just two comments on that. One is in terms of, yeah, maybe the balloons we're seeing aren't from here, but the ones from here we may not be seeing.
Right. They're in
So
Portugal.
they could be floating out in the ocean.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not like, you know, there aren't balloons that are originating from here. They might not be the predominant ones on the beach, or they may be, we don't know. And it sounds like you're looking for some more information on different things. I'm not though clear though if there was a legislation, the one that Tip is advocating for, introduced, are you at a point where you would support it or not, or you need more time to think about it? Or?
Well, I need more information
Need more
on the
information.
effect on the infrastructure.
Oh, and
It's not an up-down vote yet.
all right, so here's what I'm hearing, Tip, if I'm gonna try to bring it all together for you. So it sounds like there isn't a majority that are ready today to pass the legislation that you're looking for. It's possible that if we had all the information, there might be two who are ready to go that route, possibly. The majority of the board, I think, is probably willing to do it if everybody does it together. But in the all the other areas, the villages in the town of Southampton, maybe some of the other villages on the North and South Fork and the towns. But it seems like there might be a majority that's willing to do an interim measure, but we're not sure what that might look like, while we try to advocate for a larger prohibition on the sale. So that's what I'm hearing.
So Tip, the other municipalities that you referenced in the PowerPoint, could you actually get us some information from them on, how they've made out over time with the new legislation? I'd like to
Sure.
hear from them a little bit.
Yeah, there was one, I did, probably passed by in the presentation, I forget which town it was, who did this in 2009, I think. And there was an article in a local paper pointing out that it had been successful. And so that was the only information.
I think so.
But I
think
can
we
call,
need that type of
I can call the
information.
others
Yeah.
too.
Could you?
You
I think
know,
that was Newton, wasn't it?
with the,
I don't know.
Check.
I have to,
what the county did with plastic bags was very different than what the town did too. So the county imposed a fee. Say if you're gonna use these, but you're gonna have to add 5 cents or 10 cents, whatever it is. I can't remember. I think it's 5 cents.
If you forget your own bag.
Which I didn't think was, like, I understand that actually has been effective. I read a lot of the research. It actually is a discouragement, and the use goes down because you have to pay for the bag. And, in some areas, the bag fee has been used for environmental projects, whether it's to clean up the plastic bags on the beach or whatever. I mean, it might be an approach to add a fee. I don't think we can legally do it, I'm not sure, but, or we may be able to require that if you're going to sell a helium balloon, you have to charge a quarter extra, and that quarter's gotta go into an environmental fund of some kind. I'm not saying that that's a direction we should go.
Could you tax the helium tank? Because I know when I used to fill CO2 cartridges, I got it from Weldco or something in Batcho.
I mean, typically, those type of surcharges are considered taxes, and we don't have the right to impose them without the state giving us the right to impose them. But possibly, there could be a surcharge or tax on those helium tanks that could be used to mitigate or address some of the issues caused. It's possible. That's how the bottle bill started, with the 5 cent deposit. Is it still 5 cents or 10 cents? No, I think it's 5 cents on aluminum cans and plastic bottles. And they didn't prohibit them. They didn't say you can only use glass, but they created this recycling fee.
Well, on a national level, though, helium is a finite resource. And, as technology.
So is aluminum.
Borax and all the rest of these, they are. But, at the federal level, I don't know what activity is taking place. I know there were some initiatives at some point, particularly for MRI cooling or the increase in medical technologies that required cooling. And there was a greater, need for helium. But I also read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tip, that helium, the market itself was controlled somewhat like it's controlled, like mining is controlled in South Africa.
Well-
It artificially sets a price for helium use. But it is a finite resource, and there's only 2 places, I think, in the world where we get helium from.
there was.
There's a
one
lot of it in
place-
the atmosphere. If somebody figured out how to mine it from the atmosphere, that wouldn't be
Yeah,
mining.
unfortunately, it's a very small percentage
Yeah.
in the atmosphere. No, I haven't found anything at the federal level that does this. The problem with the price of helium, and to a degree the availability, is that beginning, I think, in the early 20th century, the government, because it was potentially going to be used for lighter than air airships, which would be a huge, huge use, they developed something like the oil reserve that we have. So a large amount of this was held by the federal government as a strategic helium reserve. And it's only, I don't know, past 10 years, the government's decided to get out of that business. So the price
That's what it-
was controlled basically by how much helium the government was willing to release from the reserves, which makes it
Artificial price, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is a natural resource, and it should be managed like any natural resource. But, well, look, we can't, we've spent quite a bit of time on it. I think the question I'm really asking you is, are you willing to accept some progress rather than no progress? Or do you want to give a shot to there might be a member of the board who's willing to introduce the law as you have proposed it. I just don't know that it'll pass. Whereas I think we probably could get something passed that was a midway measure.
I have the same sense as you do of this discussion. So I'll go back and talk to the committee and see whether we want to, see what we want to do.
Okay.
I understand the problem, particularly at a time of COVID regarding businesses. So we'll do that.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. So we are going to go to updates. So, Ryan, we already did sort of a COVID update with Ryan. Did have I mentioned that I had a department head meeting yesterday. We did that via Zoom. There was like no way I was going to put the head of every department in the town in the same room for fear that, with COVID, can you imagine that all of our senior management all couldn't function?
You mean like the town board sitting here?
It's true.
Yes.
It's true. So I am trying, good. Well, we are trying to migrate the work sessions, other than the ones that we've already noticed, I'm gonna push them to Zoom too until the numbers go down.
So the one after Thanksgiving, the next one, whatever that is, that's going to be Zoom? Because Thanksgiving's Thursday, so next week.
I don't think so. Janice isn't here at the moment, but I think that is probably the last in-person one. And then the other work sessions will be via Zoom.
So the one after Thanksgiving will be the last in person,
I
perhaps?
think so.
Okay.
I think so. We just have to check with Janice on that.
Okay.
And then, I'm going to try to keep the town board meetings, the regular town board meetings in person if we can, just to allow the public the ability to be part of it. I just feel like Zoom, it's tougher in some ways, for people to be a part of the process, but we might have to switch those over too. Most of the other towns, I think, are doing it via Zoom, right?
Yeah, we're unique,
We are the only ones.
almost unique in that sense.
Yeah, so,
The one thing I get concerned about is having to rotate people through this room. And then they have to be staged to come up.
Right.
We have our council office is trying to manage that, so.
well, let's see, how we
If
do
the
it.
numbers get to a point where.
Yeah, we're gonna watch the numbers pretty carefully, and, but we'll be prepared for that transition. I did speak with the county a little bit about McGee Street intersection. Remember when we were discussing the aquatic center, there was concern about that traffic light. So, and whether there could be a green arrow, whether it rose to enough activity. I went there the other day, and it really is failing. I mean, it's failing badly. And I went there around 11:30, in the morning, right around lunchtime, and the queue of cars on the north side by Tuckahoe School was all the way up to Sabonic, and just basically standing still, because a lot of those vehicles are either going to go across or make a left, and you have very little time. And if one of the cars trying to make, is trying to make a left and they can't because of the cars going across from the south side, then you've got 30 or 40 vehicles that are just stuck there, and they have to wait a whole nother long cycle. And so I did talk to the county about whether they'd be willing to do an analysis of that light, and whether it needs a green arrow in both directions. And their answer was basically yes, but we'd have to wait years. But they said that they would not be opposed if we did an analysis of it, of accepting our findings, as long as we used, an engineering firm, that, was reputable. And so I did talk to Len about that, and, I think we can do it. I think there's actually some money that we had programmed for the South Fork Commuter Connection advertising, which we didn't do this year. It wasn't a reimbursable funds like the shuttle itself. So I think we can identify some money that could be used to do that engineering study. So I just wanted to let you know that I'd like to move that forward, do some sort of request for professional services, engineering to study that light. Maybe we want to look at that whole interchange in and around there, Hubbard Lane, Sandy Hollow, but also, very specifically look at whether a green arrow is needed in both directions as you head north or south on McGee. And let me see. I know I had something else I wanted to update you guys on. But why don't there is the police survey that is still up on our website. That's part of the Community Law Enforcement Review Committee. We're trying to get some additional information from the public on how to improve our police functions. And while I think about the other thing, does anybody else have anything that they wanted to share?
No.
Yes?
Yes?
Okay, go ahead, Julie.
All right. So,
You promised.
Volunteer.
November is there are youth boards volunteer recognition month. So I have the final couple on the list of nominees. The first is Azaria Allen. She's 16 years old, from Riverside, and nominated by the Butterfly Effect. Chris Lyles, a Pearson High School senior, nominated by Bridgehampton Child Care. Marguerite Hedgebeth of West Hampton, nominated by Butterfly Effect. Sophia Solano, a sophomore at Hampton Bays High School, nominated by the Hampton Bays Library, head of Teen Services. And Tori Hennessy, nominated by Hugs, and Tori's an active member of Hugs. I think that when I announced last week's nominees, somebody asked where we can read their bios. Again, go to the Youth Bureau page under Volunteer Recognition Month. All the bios are there. I just want to let everybody know each honoree is also receiving a Citizens Achievement Award and a lapel pin indicating their honored status, and they're being featured on the Youth Bureau's social media pages, Instagram and Facebook. And there's also going to be a display in one of the bulletin boards in Town Hall main entryway. So I just wanted to say thanks to all the nominees, to all the volunteers in our town, especially during times like this. We need all the help that we can get, and volunteers are very special, giving of their time unselfishly. So thank you all.
Thank you, Julie. Anyone else?
Yes.
Go ahead, Tommy John.
I met with the Noyak Civic Council this week, and the primary topic of our discussion was the possibility of a cell tower. We got a presentation at the end of October about the location of a cell tower off of Club Lane in Noyak. And they're concerned, a lot of the neighbors in that area are concerned, they were in 2017. So I would like to ask the board that we do a comprehensive evaluation of our properties in the east. I spoke to the mayor of the village of Sag Harbor. They are pursuing, or they're looking into options in the village of Sag Harbor or outside the village of Sag Harbor to site a monopole, as is the village of North Haven. It's an issue. Cell service is clearly an issue, and I indicated that to the folks in Noyak as well. And I just wanted to let the board know that, the neighbors know of this, and they're not, they weren't happy in 2017 when we were looking at it, and nor are they now. But I really think that we need to do our due diligence to, look at various locations, and also to take a look at the contract that the town of Southampton has with the company that presented in front of us.
Right.
Speaking to some of the other municipalities and what they were being offered for, by various companies to install poles and what they would get back, that evaluation needs to be done as well.
We have, Karabac has been looking at that contract, and it's more of an executive session item, but we're happy to
Good.
provide that.
But that's there, and I wanted the board to know about it.
John, did you have anything?
Yeah, well, I was not.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah,
If
Mark.
I could.
Absolutely.
The Aircraft Noise Advisory Committee has presented it in front of this board, and we've gone to a number of CACs and some of the villages as well, and did a presentation with the village, including CAC West. There are still concerns of aircraft overhead and the noise in certain areas of the town. Of course, in the east, it's been an issue for the better part, more than a decade now. In the west, there seems to be an increasing concern with jet noise, some small, they're not small, but commuter jets that are flying over residential areas. And so in the west, they would like to see some of those jets flying over the Pine Barren areas rather than over the heavily populated areas in the south. And but that's some of the concerns that really came out of these meetings. So just reporting.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thanks.
So just, on the airport noise issue first, because I've gotten some correspondence regarding Amazon's proposal at Gabreski and whether that would lead to more airport noise. That proposal does not include freight service. People are thinking it includes some sort of freight use, and that I don't believe the class of airport, the FAA class of that airport, allows for freight service. The master plan for that airport does not contemplate freight service. The PDD that allowed for the industrial development of that park says specifically that the uses cannot be aviation dependent. So, and the model, as I understand it from, representatives of the property owners who are talking with the Amazon folks, is that is not what they're proposing at all. They're not bringing anything in by air. Everything is being trucked in. And there's a similar facility in Shirley, New York. Yes, it's very close to an airport, and maybe it's potential that, some of Amazon's corporate executives may choose to fly in to inspect operations and things like that, whether they fly into MacArthur or fly into Gabreski if they're able. But there is no plan in any way for any frequent type of use of the airport connected to that facility. So I certainly understand the concerns people have about increased airport noise, but it's whether it's Tate's Cookies that are there or Amazon that are there, there's no air traffic that's associated with that use. And I think it's important for people to know. And I think there may be some confusion because it's Amazon and they have this.
Well, there was some concern with that. I kind of left that out because of what you said. The concern in the West seems to be the private passenger jets, the large Gulfstream 5s.
Right, and they are seeing increased traffic. During COVID, more people are using that airport as well as East Hampton.
Well, it's the change of some of the flight plans that impact that. So, but
So-
I think fortunately in the West, they have the ability to
Right.
go over some of the pine barrens, they're able to stretch that out a little bit, so.
So, but I did remember what I was trying to think of before, and it's sort of like the opposite of airport noise. You know, with the airport, we complain that things are too loud, but people have been complaining for years that CTV is too quiet, and that they have to turn the volume on their TV set way up just to hear our meetings. And I think we've got that fixed. So we had technicians out from Altice. They were working, and you should notice a significant improvement on CTV with the sound. So you'll be, if you're watching this meeting, hopefully you'll be able to hear what I'm saying without having to make your volume much louder than all the other stations. And
I'm turning it down.
I can understand that. When I come on, you can just change channels, John. You can't do that in real life, but you can do that on TV. Another thing I wanted to mention too is when we passed the Graves Protection Act, that law required an individual be named as town archaeologist. And that town archaeologist would assist whenever human remains were encountered in terms of what to do next, what the property owner or property developer would have to do. Now, as you know, that doesn't happen very often, and hopefully it never happens, but it has happened on occasion. It happened a couple years ago on Hawthorne and many years ago in Bridgehampton. But in conversations, we've realized that having somebody as a town archaeologist would be really helpful in a number of ways. We have a moratorium in place. Could a town archaeologist be selected to do the review of those properties, or review if an independent contractor is doing the test holes on that property? We'd like to do a generic stage 1A for the moratorium area so that each individual property didn't have to do a repeat literature search. And, whatever other information needs to be gathered for that 1A. We have issues with other archaeology. A recent discovery John was telling me about of, I guess, a colonial period. So I have been working on, with Jim, has been involved with this, Jim Burke, Karaback, with trying to sort of clarify what could be a broader role for the town archaeologist. Like we have a town historian, the town archaeologist could assist us. The moratorium is a 6-month moratorium. Why do we do the moratorium? So we could change our code. Our code could then require that development in certain areas or in close proximity to known finds or culturally sensitive sites had to do an extra bit of archaeology. The town archaeologist could assist us in this period right now in figuring out what our code should look like. So there are a number of things, logical things, that could be the responsibility of a town archaeologist. Now, I did budget a certain amount in the budget we approved for the town archaeologist for next year. So we're trying to figure out, and we've been talking with Joanne McLean, who is a very well-respected archaeologist in the area, with the potential that she could be the town archaeologist. It wouldn't be a town employee. She would still be a independent professional contractor, but she would have that label of town archaeologist. She would assist Janice in our planning department with all these issues pertaining to archaeology. Jim, did I leave anything out? I think
No,
that's pretty comprehensive.
yeah.
So, as well as one other thing I left out, she would also sit on, and Lisa is here, she would sit on the Joint Stewardship Committee. We'd put her as a professional, not necessarily a voting member, but she could assist the Joint Shinnecock Town Stewardship Committee for culturally sensitive properties that we have. I don't know how often they meet, but we've put a number of properties into their responsibility area. So I think that's pretty much it. So Joanne is going to give us a proposal, sort of an hourly rate for different types of services, and I'll be bringing it to you guys. And I'll be working with Len and identifying the funding. I don't expect it to be a lot in terms of funding. Probably will be within the amount in the budget for next year for this function, to guess. But if anybody has any questions on that. All right. Okay, so that's it for updates. Let me just mention one other thing about the department head meeting. I had the opportunity also to, it was a really good meeting, but Len presented a lot about the budget and so all the department heads could hear some of the budgetary constraints we've been facing with COVID, the reductions in certain revenue categories, the increased expenses, and the fact that, we haven't seen any federal aid yet, and we're running up significant costs. Even with this most recent Cuomo requirement, where restaurants and bars have to close at 10, we're running overtime now with code enforcement to make sure that they're closing at 10. They don't normally work at 10 this time of year. So, and the department heads were terrific in terms of understanding, and we had a lot of questions that got answered, but we covered a lot of ground. Okay, and we have executive session. That would be for acquisitions and confidential legal advice, litigation and personnel. We have all those things to cover. Since I think this is our last meeting before Thanksgiving, traditionally I would, on behalf of the town, wish everybody and their families a wonderful Thanksgiving. That part hasn't changed. Just please be careful. Please be cautious. We are seeing an increase in numbers of COVID. In some cases, 3 times as much as we were seeing just a couple weeks ago. And I know we cherished the holiday. It was so much we're thankful for. And we're certainly thankful for our loved ones, and we want to protect them. And so please, the governor has said no more than 10. I do ask people to try to abide by that. Use Zoom. Zoom's going to be free. Apparently, they've made the platform for Thanksgiving free for unlimited. Normally, you have like a 40-minute time or something that you can use it one time free. Apparently, they've made it free for Thanksgiving for everybody, which is pretty cool. So, find ways to get on the phone and talk to the people you love and wish them a happy, Thanksgiving. And but just please be careful. Well, we want you here with us. We're going to get through the COVID. I say that a lot. We will get through this. And we want you here when we get through it. And we'll have a lot to celebrate at the end, but not with helium balloons. We'll find another way to celebrate.
And we do have a town board meeting before Thanksgiving, so you can repeat all that.
Oh, we do?
We do.
Well, why didn't you tell me that right from the start?
Well, because it's good to repeat,
Because I have a note here. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving week.
right?
So
Am I wrong or am I right?
Yes, we have a meeting
we
Tuesday.
do have
This Tuesday,
we have a
right?
meeting on Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
All right.
It's a 1 o'clock meeting? Or-
Well, we have our draft agenda, so let's take a look. I don't have my
Oh,
glasses
that's right.
on.
We read the.
Thank you.
It's a 1 o'clock, right, Rick?
Yeah, please.
Okay,
No,
thanks.
No, 6.
Because I thought you said 6, and I read 1 o'clock.
No, it's 6 o'clock
6
on
p.m.
Tuesday. All
Okay.
right, so you're going to hear me say it again.
Oh,
That's okay.
okay.
I'll try to say it slightly differently. All right? But no, a lot of kids are starting to come home from the holidays,
Yeah.
from colleges. So, and people are going out
Common sense,
shopping.
common sense.
Please be careful. All right, and with that cautionary note, I will make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session on the items I mentioned.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned for all other purposes.